Angel Reese had the game right in front of her. The score was tied. The clock was winding down. She was standing underneath the basket with a chance to put Atlanta ahead and potentially finish off the Indiana Fever. It was the kind of look every basketball player wants. Wide open, point-blank range, one shot to win the game. And somehow, it didn't go in. The ball rolled off the rim. Indiana survived, and the game went into overtime. But what happened after that missed layup turned one moment into a much bigger conversation. Because the Fever took advantage. Atlanta's offense started falling apart. Indiana seized control. And once the clips started spreading online, people immediately began bringing up Angel Reese's past comments about where she sees herself in the WNBA. That included comparisons to the biggest names in basketball history and the confidence surrounding her status as one of the league's biggest stars. Then Stephen A. Smith entered the conversation, and once he started breaking down the contrast between the missed opportunity and the expectations that come with calling yourself a superstar, the debate exploded. So in this video, we're breaking down exactly what happened in this game, why that missed layup became such a huge moment, how Indiana turned the momentum around, and why the Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark conversation became even louder afterward. Because this was about much more than one missed shot. It became a conversation about pressure, expectations, leadership, and what happens when the biggest moment of the game lands directly in your hands. Let's get into it. The situation could not have been more dramatic. Atlanta had an opportunity to win the game in regulation. A shot went up. The ball came off the rim. Angel Reese was right there, doing what she does best, crashing the glass and putting herself in position for the rebound. She secured the ball underneath the basket. There was space. There was an open look. And for a split second, it looked like the game was over. But the finish didn't fall. Instead of celebrating a game-winning basket, Atlanta was suddenly heading into overtime, and you could immediately feel the momentum change. Indiana had just been given another life. The Fever bench reacted. The players knew exactly what had just happened. A game that could have ended right, that was suddenly still alive. And in basketball, moments like that can completely change everything. One team feels like it just escaped disaster. The other team has to recover emotionally from knowing it had to win right in front of it. That is exactly what made this miss so important. This wasn't a random shot during the first quarter. This wasn't a bucket in the middle of a blowout. This was crunch time. The game was hanging in the balance. And Atlanta had the opportunity to finish the job. But the opportunity slipped away. The possession itself wasn't even perfectly executed. After the game, Atlanta's coach explained that there was supposed to be a screen involved in the action, but the team failed to set it. So the offense wasn't exactly running according to plan. Still, after everything broke down, Atlanta ended up with a look close to the basket and a chance to win. That is why the missed layup became the defining image of the game. Because even when the original play broke down, Atlanta still got an opportunity that most teams would gladly take with the game on the line. And it just didn't fall. Once the game moved forward, Indiana started taking control of the momentum. The Fever made adjustments defensively, and Atlanta struggled to respond. One of the biggest changes came with Indiana's defense. The Fever went to a zone, and according to the post-game discussion, that adjustment caused major problems for Atlanta's offense. Instead of moving the ball quickly and attacking the defense, Atlanta became stagnant. Players were standing around. The ball stopped moving, and possession started becoming more difficult. That was one of the biggest themes coming out of the game. Atlanta wasn't necessarily losing because of one player or one possession alone. The bigger problem was that the offense stopped functioning as a unit when the pressure increased. And against a defense like Indiana's, standing still is exactly what you cannot do. The Fever were able to close driving lanes, force difficult decisions, and make every possession feel more complicated. Atlanta struggled to generate clean looks. Meanwhile, Indiana kept fighting. The Fever understood that they had been given another chance. And instead of wasting it, they used the momentum from that missed opportunity to completely change the direction of the game. That is what makes basketball so brutal sometimes. One missed layup doesn't automatically lose a game, but the emotional impact of a missed opportunity can completely shift the energy. Indiana suddenly believed it could win. Atlanta suddenly had to recover. And once overtime began, the pressure only increased. After the game, Atlanta's coach didn't hide the fact that he was disappointed with the way the offense operated. He talked about the team becoming stagnant. He talked about players standing around instead of moving. He talked about the importance of penetrating, cutting, flashing into open areas, and keeping the ball moving against Indiana's zone. That criticism became one of the biggest talking points after the game. Because when a coach publicly explains that his team stopped moving and started watching the player with a basketball, people are going to analyze exactly what happened. And that's what happened here. Atlanta's offense became predictable. Instead of multiple players moving and creating options, possessions became slower. The defense had more time to get organized. Passing lanes disappeared. Driving opportunities became more difficult. And Indiana took advantage. The coach even explained that Atlanta had discussed these exact issues during timeouts. The team had worked against zone defenses in practice. But when the biggest moments arrived, they drifted away from what they were supposed to do. And that is a major problem in close games. Because basketball changes when the pressure gets higher. Everybody knows the score. Everybody knows how much each possession matters. And if an offense becomes stagnant at that point, one missed shot can quickly turn into several bad possessions in a row. That's exactly why this game became such a frustrating loss for Atlanta. They had opportunities. They had a chance to win in regulation. They had players making major contributions. But when the game reached its most important moments, the execution disappeared. What makes the ending even more frustrating for Atlanta is that Alicia Gray delivered a massive performance. She put up a huge scoring night and did everything she could to keep Atlanta competitive. She attacked. She scored. She competed on both ends. And for large portions of the game, she was one of the biggest reasons Atlanta had a chance to win. But after the final result, almost nobody was talking about that performance. Instead, the conversation centered around the missed layup, the offensive collapse, and everything that happened afterward. That's the unfortunate reality of sports. Sometimes one moment becomes so big that it overshadows everything else. A player can have one of the best games of her career. Another player can dominate for 3 quarters. A team can battle all night. But if the final possession goes wrong, that's often the clip everybody remembers. And that's what happened here. Gray's performance deserved attention. But the ending was simply too dramatic. The missed opportunity became the story. Now, this is where the story became much bigger than one game. Angel Reese has never been afraid to speak confidently about herself. She has embraced the spotlight. She has embraced being one of the most recognizable names in women's basketball. And that confidence has helped build one of the biggest brands in the sport. But confidence also creates expectations. The bigger the statements, the bigger the expectations become when the biggest moments arrive. And after this game, people immediately started bringing up comments associated with Reese about being the IT girl and comparisons involving Michael Jordan. Those clips had already existed online. But after the missed layup, they suddenly took on a completely different meaning for critics. Social media started putting the old comments next to footage of the missed opportunity. And from there, the debate exploded. Some people defended Reese. They argued that one missed shot should not define an entire player. And that's a fair point. Every great player in basketball history has missed important shots. Nobody shoots perfectly. Nobody delivers in every single clutch moment. But critics had a different argument. Their point was that when you openly embrace superstar comparisons and superstar expectations, every major moment is going to be judged differently. That is the reality of being a star. The expectations are higher, and the criticism becomes louder when things don't work out. Stephen A. Smith became one of the loudest voices connected to the discussion. His argument focused on the difference between confidence and performance. He looked at the missed opportunity and compared it with the expectations surrounding Reese's public image. The basic idea was simple. If you're going to put yourself in conversations with the biggest names in basketball history, people are going to expect you to deliver in the biggest moments. That's what comes with those comparisons. The reason Michael Jordan's name carries so much weight isn't because he called himself great. It's because of what he did when the pressure was at its highest. His legacy was built through championships, performances, and iconic moments. So when Stephen A. discussed the situation, the criticism wasn't just about one missed layup. It was about expectations. It was about the difference between the image of being a superstar and proving it consistently on the court. And that argument immediately divided basketball fans. Some thought the criticism was completely fair. Others thought it was excessive. Because at the end of the day, basketball players miss shots. A missed layup, no matter how important, does not erase everything a player has accomplished. But once the conversation moved beyond the individual play and into the bigger discussion about branding and expectations, there was no stopping it. The internet had found its debate. While Atlanta was trying to recover from the missed opportunity, Caitlin Clark and the Fever continued doing what they needed to do. Clark's impact wasn't just about scoring. She controlled the offense. She created opportunities. She read the defense. And she continued finding teammates when the defense tried to take away her own scoring opportunities. That is one of the biggest differences between simply putting up numbers and controlling an entire game. A point guard can score 25 points and still not control the game. But when a player is creating shots for teammates, manipulating the defense, pushing the pace, and making the right decisions possession after possession, the entire offense becomes more dangerous. And that's what Indiana was getting. Clark found cutters. She found players rolling toward the basket. She created open shots. She kept the defense moving. And even when the opposing team tried to load up against her, she continued making reads. That's why Indiana's offense looked so different from Atlanta's late in the game. The Fever kept finding ways to involve multiple players. The ball moved. Players cut. The defense had to react. And those small details added up. One possession led to another. One extra pass created another open look. And suddenly Indiana's entire offense had more life. This game became a perfect example of how important movement is in basketball. When the ball moves, the defense has to move. When players cut, defenders have to make decisions. When the offense has multiple threats, it becomes much harder to predict what is coming next. Indiana used that to its advantage. Clark's ability to read the floor created opportunities for her teammates. Players were able to get involved. Cuts to the basket became important. Transition opportunities opened up. And Indiana's defense created additional possessions. That is what makes a team difficult to stop. It's not always about one superstar doing everything. Sometimes the best basketball happens when one player makes a defense react and another player benefits from the space that creates. That is why several Fever players were able to make an impact. The team didn't need one person to rescue every possession. Different players contributed in different moments. And that was especially important after the missed layup changed the momentum of the game. Indiana didn't panic. They stayed connected. They executed. And eventually, they walk away with the result. Of course, whenever Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are connected to the same major storyline, the conversation becomes even bigger. Their rivalry has been one of the most discussed storylines in basketball. Fans compare them constantly. Their playing styles are different. Their strengths are different. Their roles are different. And because both players have huge fan bases, every major game becomes another opportunity for people to argue. After this game, those debates returned immediately. Clark supporters pointed to her ability to control the offense and make her teammates better. Reese's supporters pointed out her rebounding, physicality, presence, and the fact that one missed shot does not define her entire career. Both sides had arguments. But the biggest takeaway from the game was not that one player is automatically better than the other. The bigger takeaway was about how differently the two teams operated when the game reached its most important moments. Indiana found a way to stay organized. Atlanta struggled to execute, and that difference decided the game. The coach's comment became a major talking point. The post-game comments from Atlanta's coach only added more fuel to the conversation. He explained that the offense became stagnant. He talked about players standing around. He discussed the need to keep moving against the zone. And he admitted that Atlanta had opportunities to win. That phrase kept coming back throughout the discussion. They had opportunities. They had looks. They had chances to finish the game. But they didn't. And when the final possession was discussed, the coach explained that the team even forgot part of the original action. A screen that was supposed to happen never happened. Still, Atlanta managed to create multiple opportunities near the basket. The shots just didn't go down. That's what made the loss so difficult. It wasn't a situation where Indiana completely dominated from start to finish. Atlanta had chances, real chances. They could have won in regulation. They could have changed the entire story. But basketball doesn't care about what almost happened. Only the final result remains. And Indiana walked away with the win. By the time the game ended, the clips were already spreading everywhere. The missed layup was being replayed. The post-game comments were being analyzed. Old interviews were resurfacing. And fans from both sides were arguing over what the game actually meant. Some people used the moment to criticize Angel Reese heavily. Others argued that the reaction was completely over the top. And somewhere in the middle was probably the simplest truth. It was one missed shot, but it was also a very important missed shot. Those two things can both be true. One moment does not define an entire career. At the same time, certain moments become part of a player's story, especially when they happen in close games, under pressure, with everybody watching. That's why this play became such a huge topic. Not because Angel Reese is the first basketball player to miss a layup, but because of the timing, because of the rivalry, because of the expectations, because of the comments that had already been made. And because the Indiana Fever was standing on the other side ready to take advantage, everything came together at once. What this game really exposed. When you take away all the memes, all the social media arguments, and all the dramatic headlines, this game came down to execution. Indiana executed better when it mattered most. Atlanta had opportunities but couldn't finish them. The Fever made defensive adjustments. Atlanta struggled against those adjustments. Clark continued creating for her teammates. Indiana's supporting players stepped up. Atlanta's offense became stagnant in critical moments. And the missed layup became the moment everyone remembered. That's the real story. This wasn't simply about one player. It was about two teams responding differently under pressure. Indiana played like a team that believed it could survive. Atlanta played like a team trying to recover from a missed opportunity. And once overtime arrived, that difference became impossible to ignore. For Angel Reese, the criticism from this game will eventually fade. Another game will happen. Another major moment will take over the headlines. That's how sports work. But the expectations surrounding her aren't going away. She's one of the biggest names in women's basketball. She's one of the most talked about players in the league. And she has embraced being a star. That means every major moment will continue to be analyzed. The good ones will be celebrated. The bad ones will be criticized. And that is part of the territory. The real answer will come from how she responds. Great players have bad games. Great players miss shots. But they also get another opportunity. And another opportunity. And eventually, the next big moment arrives. That's when the conversation can change all over again. For Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, this game represented another example of what happens when the team is working together. Clark's ability to score gets most of the attention. Her deep shots get the highlights. Her passes go viral. But one of the most important parts of her game is the way she changes the entire fence. Defenses have to react to her. That creates opportunities for everybody else. If they trap her, someone is open. If they give her space, she can shoot. If they overcommit, she can find the next pass. That is what makes the Fever difficult to defend when everything is working. And in this game, Indiana had enough players making important contributions to survive the pressure and capitalize on Atlanta's mistakes. The Fever didn't need one player to do absolutely everything. They needed everybody to contribute. And when the game reached its biggest moments, that's exactly what happened. At the end of the night, the story was simple. Angel Reese had a chance to win the game. The shot didn't fall. Indiana survived. The Fever took advantage of the momentum shift. Atlanta's offense struggled to execute. Caitlin Clark and her teammates continued making plays. And when the final result was decided, the missed layup had become the moment everyone was talking about. From there, Stephen A. Smith's comments added even more fuel to the debate. Fans started bringing up old statements. The Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark conversation returned. And social media did what social media always does. It turned one basketball moment into a massive argument about legacy, leadership, expectations, and who deserves to be called a superstar. But the season is bigger than one game. Angel Reese will have more opportunities. Caitlin Clark will have more opportunities. Indiana will continue chasing bigger goals. Atlanta will have to figure out how to close games and keep its offense moving under pressure. And the next time these players step onto the court, everybody will be watching. Because after a game like this, every big shot matters even more. So what do you think? Was the criticism of Angel Reese fair after that missed opportunity? Or did people take one bad moment way too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more WNBA stories, debates, and breaking basketball news. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.